Hey, so good to see you. This is our class. Here we go. So good to see you. We're going to begin with some prayers as usual. Karen, would you like to put up the prayers? There we go. Okay, so thinking of the meaning, we'll say once in Tibetan and once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye Churang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunyan Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Churang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunyan Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho. To try to think of the meaning of that. And then offering a short mandala, which is a kind of condensation. Well, mandala is kind of a condensation of all of the methods of creation of merit and purification. So rather than doing 7 limb puja, this is sometimes sufficient. Sashi-poki Chukshing Meto Tramri Rablingji Nidegen Padi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwargi Drokunam Dakshingla Chupasho. Jesu Lama Dampa Kenham Ki Chuku Kalam Kenze Chuzinte Chitar Sampe Dulje Zimala Sabke Chuki Charpa Abtu So Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Thank you. Before we meditate, I'll just mention some of you who might have seen on the Facebook page that the movie The Cup was available in the United States. If you watched that, you might have seen the mandala offering the monks were making. Quite beautiful. And also quotations from the Bodhisattva Vatara that the abbot, when he was teaching the boys, was if you may have recognized the verses from the chapter on patience. So that's a good movie to watch. The Cup was directed by the Khyentse Rinpoche, who was sort of the director of that. So we're going to begin with a little bit of meditation as usual. So sit comfortably. Relax your body. Find it nice position. Your spine is erect. Relax your mind, which takes a little bit of effort. Remind yourself you don't have to think about anything else other than just watching your breathing, the respiration. When it's coming in and going out. And once you've recognized it, hold it in mind with the mental factor of mindfulness. Recognizing when you're breathing in and breathing out to the exclusion of all other thoughts. If you count, to 7 respirations or 21, you can give yourself another reason for not thinking about what's coming next. Because when you get to that count, then you can bring your mind back to the present. Like myself, I'm thinking, what am I going to say after this? So just remembering to not only watch the breathing, but count the respirations. And if you've had a little success in calming the mind, if you're on your own and you haven't had success yet, you just continue on to 21 respirations or whatever. If you have some success, let go of focusing on the breathing and instead focus on your mental consciousness. Yeah, one part of the mind, one part of the mental consciousness, watching the rest like a little spy in the corner of the room, or a video camera watching the rest of the room. Be aware of your ego, your body, states of mind, maybe a little bit of attachment or anger or sensitivity to a pain in your body. All the contents of your mental consciousness. Recognize them as like clouds in the clear light nature of your mind, and resolve to let go of them and perceive the spaciousness between the thoughts at first, letting go of the thoughts, and even when thoughts occur, recognizing that they can only occur within that clear light nature. Conventional clear light nature of the mind, the absence of any viscosity, so to speak, any kind of hindrance to thoughts arising or absorbing back into the clear light nature of the mind. Let go of eventually the appearance of your body, the sense of your body appearing there, looming before you. Let go of your sense of ego. Letting go like this is not an apprehension of emptiness. It's simply just not paying attention to that. This conventional clear light nature of the mind is the developmental Buddha nature, which we all possess. Understanding it gives us the confidence that we can become ourselves Buddha. We can become omniscient. We can eliminate all the faults from our mind. Develop all of the virtuous qualities, including renunciation, bodhicitta. Of course, compassion is the cause of bodhicitta, the right view of emptiness. Our recognition of that right now is due to the fact that we have a life of leisure and endowment, which is the result, karmic results of our previous lives' virtuous actions and prayers, especially the practice of morality and generosity. This life of leisure and endowment, this auspicious moment, is transient. With every second, we're getting closer to the end of this experience right now, this life. Like falling in an elevator through time. Eventually, we're going to hit the ground floor and this life will be over. How will we feel then? How we spent this life on trivial pursuits of romance or power, or ego, wealth, pursuing the objects of the senses, pleasures. Or we can use this life, this auspicious moment, to practice the Dharma, and at the time of death, have some feeling of satisfaction, some sense of security. We've done our best. We let go of our addictions. We created some virtuous karma so we can look forward with some confidence to future life. Beyond that, thinking all living beings are exactly the same as us, from the mosquitoes and worms to the spirits, to the hell beings, to the humans, to the gods, all caught in cyclic existence, all lifetimes within those realms of limited extent and of the nature of suffering, wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. All of these beings, most of them without a protector. Well, maybe they have family members or wealthy patrons or someone to protect them, or the police, but not refuge protectors, someone to protect them from the fears of cyclic existence. How wonderful it would be if I could become such a refuge protector for sentient beings. How wonderful it would be if I could become a Buddha who could effortlessly and spontaneously, without error, lead sentient beings out of their present suffering into the everlasting blissful happiness of enlightenment. To do that, I need to collect the two I need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. In order to do that, I need to know the methods and the wisdom that the Buddha taught. In the next period of time, having a chance to listen to teachings on the great treatise on emptiness by Lama Khapa, the Gompa Rapsal, illumination of the intent, covering all of those points eventually. I think I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the meanings presented in order to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, in order to become a Buddha, so that I can perfectly alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings who are exactly equal to me, wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering, equal in having the Buddha potential, both the conventional Buddha nature and the ultimate Buddha nature of emptiness of their mind. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to become a Buddha, in order to benefit all sentient beings. That's my life goal. That's my, end point. Whatever happens along the way, good things or bad things, even in future lives, some bad lives, some good lives, but still somewhere in the back of my mind, that strong aim that I'm going to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. So, good to see you. We're doing, it's good to see Cornelius is with us again. Savansh, Don, Tal. I didn't see before. Toby is there. Okay, good. So, any particular questions, burning questions left over from before? A couple of you were here early, so they got a chance to ask questions. If you come 15, 20 minutes before class, before the class is recorded, we have a chance to ask your questions in detail. Also, the discussion groups on Mondays, if it happens to work out with you time-wise, we go over a lot of these other kinds of questions that people have. Okay. So, nothing burning? Okay. So we are going to start on, if you have the Jinpa's written text, or printed text rather, around page 93 in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation in that book, Compassion in Tibetan Buddhism. It's page 166. That's easy, even if you have the PDF of that, because if you scroll through the PDF, you can see the page numbers on those pages. So Hopkins 166. And if you have the digital edition and you don't have pagination that matches that, you can look for the phrase, "From this we can discern that even Shravaka and Pratika Buddhas, arhats, have completely eliminated the grasping at true existence of the aggregates." That's where we are. You don't have to put all those words in, something that you can find it easily in the search function. Okay. So we're all ready? No questions from before? Venerable Palmo, you have any questions? I haven't seen you in a while. You're okay? Okay. Okay. So.
Yes, I'm fine. I've been here. You just haven't seen me.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, you have been here. Okay.
Yep.
I do remember seeing your name in the black box. And I just wanted to see.
Here to this today.
Come again?
Anyways, but I'm here. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Venerable George,
Yes,
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi, it's John. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I see John's iPhone. I can see on the. Okay.
Hi. So I do have a question,
Okay.
but it's not specific to the text, so you may want to
Okay.
bring it up later.
Say it.
The question is, when in our opening prayers, and you refer to the conventional clear light nature of the mind.
Right.
What does that qualifier conventional mean?
Well, there are two clear light natures of the mind. You say the conventional clear light nature and the ultimate clear light nature. The ultimate clear light nature refers to the emptiness of the mind itself. That itself also, is necessary to be able to become a Buddha. So that's also called the ultimate Buddha nature. And the conventional clear light nature of the mind is something that we can perceive, that we mentioned is the lack of any obstruction of the mental consciousness to the arisal or absorption of delusions back into it, of thoughts back into it. Perceiving that is what's, you're perceiving what the Dalai Lama calls he makes the equivalence. That conventional clear light nature can be called the developmental Buddha nature. Usually when we talk about Buddha nature, we talk about the non-abiding Buddha nature. That's the ultimate clear light nature of the mind. It's emptiness. And when we talk about the developmental Buddha nature, that's the ability, the fact that we have the ability to develop all the good qualities and to eliminate all the faults from the mind. So that is a result of that conventional clear light nature of the mind. Okay, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So just on the previous page, we saw that the section that we're starting now, it says the sources in the treatises and the Hinayana Sutras. And we finished last time this quotation from Precious Garland that said, so long as there is grasping at the aggregates, the five aggregates, the body, the feelings, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness, there is grasping at the I. So it's not possible, Nagarjuna was saying, it's not possible to eliminate the actual subtle grasping to I unless you've eliminated the grasping to the aggregates, the grasping at the aggregates as being inherently existent. So the Hinayana scriptures, not necessarily the Hinayana sutras, but the general tenet systems of the Hinayana say that, oh no, you don't need to realize the emptiness of the aggregates. You don't have to eliminate the grasping at the aggregates as inherently existent. Simply realizing that the person is empty of a self-supporting, substantially existent person is enough to get out of samsara. But Nagarjuna says very clearly there. So as long as there is grasping at the aggregates, meaning grasping at them as inherently existent, as long as you haven't realized that that the aggregates are empty of inherent existence, there will be grasping to the I. And when there is grasping at the I, one creates karma. Text says there is karma. And from that, and from this in turn comes birth. That means, you create the throwing karma to be contaminated karma to be born in cyclic existence. And at the time of death, because you still have grasping at the I, if you haven't eliminated it yet, that will cause those karmic seeds to ripen, and you will have rebirth within cyclic existence. With 3 avenues, with no beginning, end, or middle, this round of cyclic existence resembles a ring of fire, thus one causing the other. Beings resolve in cyclic existence, in samsara. Since it is not to be found at all in both self and others, even in the 3 times, grasping at I will come to cease. From this, action and birth will cease as well. So that that third line, because this wheel is not obtained from self or others. So he puts the word wheel in there, the wheel of cyclic existence, or from both in the past, present, or future, the conception of I ceases, and thereby also karma and rebirth, action and rebirth. Okay, so we finished that last time, that we read a little bit of the commentary. The first 2 lines of the citation indicate how, so long as there is grasping a true existence of the aggregates, the identity view, the view of the transitory collection that grasps that at I, grasps that I am, that will emerge from it. As long as you have not realized emptiness of the aggregates, in addition to the emptiness of the person, you will still have that. In so doing, these lines demonstrate how for the identity view to cease, the view of the transitory collection to be eliminated entirely, one must cease the grasping at the true existence of the aggregates. Okay, so that's where we finished last time. And I just read this line from today. From this, we can discern that even Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats have completely eliminated the grasping at true existence of the aggregates. So we gave other reasons before from Mahayana sutras. Now this is from treatises, right? So sutras and treatises are a little bit different. Sutras are the words of the Buddha, the Dashabhumika and these other sutras. And we were talking about Mahayana sutras, and now we're talking about some of these Mahayana treatises, or we could call shastras, commentaries, and so forth. So this is clear? Everyone okay? What do you think? So there's more reasons why, scriptural reasonings why the Shravakas and Pratika Buddha, Aryas and Arhats have to have realized emptiness of inherent existence. It's not enough to simply realize the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. As I mentioned before, the 2 general things that you have to use: scriptural citations and reasoning. So reasoning can be based on reasoning from the scriptures and reasoning from your own experience. And we're talking about all of these things together. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has mentioned that to realize emptiness, it's important to know these scriptural citations and to think about them and to use reasoning, logic, and so forth. Okay, so text continuing. This being so, what being so? That the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats have necessarily eliminated grasping at true existence. This being so, unless the object of apprehension of grasping at true existence is eradicated, the object of apprehension of the identity view will not be eradicated. So Snehi had mentioned either this quotation or something similar, just just a few minutes ago. What this means that what is appearing to your mental consciousness when you think of the I, or you think of the aggregates, is what appears to your consciousness is the appearance of an inherently existent I and inherently existing aggregates. You might say, well, why are you talking about the mind, the mental consciousness? I can see my body aggregate with my I consciousness. I can see Toby's body consciousness with my I aggregate, and so forth. But that's not the problem. What appears to your consciousnesses as inherently existent, that's not the main problem. That's part of the problem. The main problem is that your mind believes that. Your mental consciousness grasps at that. That's what's meant here by the object of apprehension, of grasping at true existence. So you may be grasping to the I, your own self-identity, as being inherently existent. It's appearing to be inherently existent, and in addition to the appearance, you're grasping to it. You're assenting to that view. You're saying, yeah, that's right. I mean, you don't, not necessarily you use those words, but your mind is kind of believing that. That's okay. So unless you have eliminated the object of apprehension, of grasping of true existence, means the true existence of the aggregates, the object of apprehension of the view of the transitory collection, the identity view, will not be eliminated. So that's pretty clear, right? Make sense? Okay. Thus, we come to recognize that the selflessness of persons that is accepted commonly by both the Hinayana and other Mahayana schools, other than the Prasangika, other Mahayana schools, negates only a coarse selflessness of persons, and that such negation does not constitute the subtle selflessness of persons. So even if you were to eliminate the gross selflessness of persons, you would not have, you wouldn't have sufficient resources to achieve nirvana. You wouldn't be able to escape from cyclic existence. You have to realize the subtle selflessness of persons. In view of the above, those people who maintain that the Master Chandrakirti's position on how Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize the selflessness of persons, those people who say it's his view, Chandrakirti's view, is the same as other schools, but assert that he differs from others on the question of whether Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize selflessness of phenomena, they have failed to properly comprehend this master's position. So actually pretty clear, but maybe if you don't think about it, not quite clear what he's saying there. Jennifer, what's Lama Tsong saying there?
I take it that he's saying that some people think that selflessness of persons is sufficient enough to realize, to become liberated, but they're basically missing the mark because they are not realizing selflessness of phenomena.
Yeah, that's somewhere.
But they're assuming Chandra. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's good. So it's basically what he's saying is that there's some people who say Chandrakirti's position on how Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize the selflessness of persons is the same as other schools. That means that Chandrakirti, they think, some people say, Chandrakirti is saying, yeah, they do realize the selflessness of gross selflessness of persons, which what the Prasangika is calling the gross selflessness of persons, and that's sufficient to achieve nirvana. That's kind of what Jennifer is saying. But in the same hand, they say that he differs from others on whether the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize selflessness of phenomena. So they're saying, oh yeah, they do. Chandrakirti is saying they do realize the selflessness of phenomena, but that's not necessary to achieve nirvana. So they're missing the point. The point is that without realizing the selflessness of phenomena, just they're realizing the gross selflessness of persons is not sufficient. So then Lama Tsongkhapa says, for it is stated in the commentary that is, when we say commentary here, that means the Chandrakirti's auto commentary, right? It is stated in the commentary that there is no realization of selflessness of persons for someone who is divorced from the view of suchness. And that particular statement, and I didn't put down where it comes in Chandrakirti's commentary, but that particular statement from the commentary says, because of, it is somewhere around this point, I think, because of being distorted due to observing a nature of form and so forth. This is what Chandrakirti says in his Madhyamaka Bhasham, in his auto commentary. Because of being wrong or distorted due to observing a nature of form and so forth, grasping at that, it will not even realize the selflessness of persons, or they will not realize the selflessness of persons, because of observing the aggregates, meaning observing them, believing them to be inherently existent, which is the cause of imputing the self. Sumash? Yeah.
Yes, Venerable George. The question I had, which actually came up in between our sessions, the previous one and this one, was that I have not, quite frankly, I have not taken the time to look at all the premises and all of the supporting arguments for the position that is stated over here by Lama Tsongkhapa. But
you're like American politicians.
Pardon me?
When a bill comes up, they haven't looked at all of the underlying reasons. Yeah. I'm just joking. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm just too busy, but and haven't had the time. But Ray, so here's my question. Okay. Very often in Mahayana sutras, like the Heart Sutra or the Vimalakirti Sutra, the Buddha has a Mahayana student, and he has Shariputra. And the Mahayana student, like Subhuti, is asked, and then he gives an answer, and the answer is meant to shed light on something that Shariputra did not comprehend. Okay.
Or else Shariputra himself is asking. Yeah.
Yes.
And
exactly.
not only Shariputra, there are other Hinayana Arhats who are in some of the sutras also, but Subhuti, Shariputra's good example. So then, yes. What the question?
Yes. So my question is, in those conversations, right? And I'm not giving you examples over here, but if you open up those texts and look in those in that conversation that's flowing between them, is the theme primarily to convince Shariputra about expanding, about is it it's probably more of the bodhisattva ideal, right? Expanding that vision of things, right? If this argument that we see over here, which is that in his understanding, right, in Shariputra's understanding, if he sees the emptiness that he sees is of complete phenomena and persons, right, then it's probably not that is being pointed to Shariputra. It must therefore be the bodhisattva ideal that is being highlighted. Do you see my question?
Not completely clearly. There are different situations. Sometimes in the sutras, there may be kind of admonition of Shariputra or some other Hinayana viewpoint, but oftentimes it's the Hinayana arhats who are asking questions. How did the bodhisattvas see this? And although it's explained to them, and they may realize, as Lama Khapa is saying here, as Nagarjuna is saying, as Chandrakirti is saying, they necessarily realize emptiness. They don't realize it with so many different reasonings. So some of the reasonings that are being given to them are, so they can hear them, and maybe eventually in the future, when they reach nirvana and the Hinayana path, and they awaken and they enter the Mahayana, they'll have some imprints of these reasonings in their mind. I don't know, in the Heart Sutra, Maitreya, Avalokiteshvara rather, is telling Shariputra, when Shariputra says, how do the bodhisattvas practice the perfection of wisdom? He says they meditate on the emptiness of the aggregates also. That's completely relevant to what we're saying here, that they realize that the aggregates are empty of inherent existence. So Shariputra and the other arhats must have known that, but maybe not all of the Hinayana arhats, Hinayana practitioners knew that. If they didn't know that they had to meditate on the emptiness of the aggregates also, they would not be able to achieve arhatship, even though they might have great realizations, and other people might say, oh, my teacher, the arhat, they might still, after death, be born in cyclic existence. So it's kind of a general teaching in general. Okay.
Yeah, I think that where my question stems from is that very often in the Mahayana Sutras, you find the Hinayana practitioner is being, told something, right? He's got a question. And so if it's true that his understanding is equivalent, right, then for me, the question arises, it begs the question, well, what is it he is being taught if he already has equal understanding? And I think in the past, you've mentioned to me that it's expedient means, right? More reasonings.
Right. One of the special things about the Mahayana, besides the method side, okay, the Hinayana doesn't. The Hinayana practitioners don't have the method side of bodhicitta, right? But in terms of the wisdom side, if they are actually Arya beings or arhats, they have realized emptiness, but they haven't realized it with as many reasonings as the bodhisattvas have in their intellectual arsenal, so to speak. The bodhisattvas, because of having the need to remain in cyclic existence for, 3 countless great eons, practicing the sutra path, they need to have more reasonings to establish emptiness again and again in more and more subtle circumstances.
Okay.
So the Hinayana practitioners, this whole situation of the, whether the Hinayana practitioners realize emptiness this is why Lama Tsongkhapa is spending this whole section, which is not found in Chandrakirti's text. Chandrakirti's text mentions it very briefly and then goes on to other things. Nagarjuna mentions it briefly as though everyone knows this. Lama Tsongkhapa, in order to overcome misapprehensions about this, goes into great detail from the sutra, Mahayana sutras, to the Hinayana, to the Mahayana Shastras like Nagarjuna, which we just read, then the Hinayana Suttas and so forth, to show that there is sufficient information for the Hinayana practitioners to realize emptiness of the aggregates, not just the emptiness of phenomena, not just the emptiness of the person or selflessness of the person. But there may have been many who did not realize that. That's the point.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me continue on. Okay. Okay, so then the text continues. The next two lines from the Precious Garland indicate how one accumulates karma because of the presence of the identity view. Because there's the existence of the view of the transitory collection in one's mind stream, that subtle kind of grasping to the inherent existence of your own identity, you accumulate, you have, whether you've temporarily suppressed other delusions, you still are, if you haven't realized this, you're still creating some subtle kind of karma to throw you in cyclic existence. You accumulate karma because of the presence of the identity view and how one takes birth in cyclic existence owing to the force of karma. All right, that's pretty clear. All of this is stated to address one who has yet to eradicate the object of apprehension of grasping at true existence in relation to the aggregates. So all of this is stated to address someone who has not yet eradicated, eliminated the object of apprehension at the grasping of true existence in relation to the aggregates. So the aggregates are appearing to them as inherently existent, and they're grasping to that. Grasping to that means they're believing that, they're going along with that, they're assenting to that view without doubt. So all of this is stated to address such a person. The statement is not made from the more general perspective of the mere presence of the identity view in a person. For example, although the identity view persists up until the seventh ground, bodhisattva ground, let's say that's for a bodhisattva. On the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds, they've eliminated the view of the transitory collection or the identity view, but through the 7th ground, they still have that. Although the identity view persists up until the 7th ground, one no longer takes rebirth through the power of karma from the 1st ground onward, right? Why is that? Because having achieved the path of seeing, even though one has not totally eliminated the view of the transitory collection, one has eliminated that portion of it which at the time of death causes craving and grasping to ripen the karmic seeds. One is still creating contaminated karma, when one is not in meditative equipoise on emptiness, but one will not take rebirth within cyclic existence to uncontrolled karma and delusion at the time of death. Let me see. I see Jennifer's eyes look a little bit dubious. What do you think?
Not dubious, just confused. So sorry. I thought that from the 8th ground upwards, that's when a being becomes liberated. So could you just
That means that they well, from the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, they are equivalent to a Hinayana Arhat in the sense of having totally ceased all of the delusions, so that those delusions will never arise in their mind. Even from the first ground onward, they will no longer take rebirth in cyclic existence due to karma and delusion.
I see. And so thank you. And if one were to use like maybe Hinayana terms in terms of Arhat, then you wouldn't say, so they become equivalent from the 8th bhumi. Okay, sorry. I think I always associate the word Arhat in terms of not taking rebirth through the power of karma. And it sounds like you're saying, no, it's.
Well, even
yeah.
before arhatship, say for instance, when we talk about these 4 kinds of Aryas, we say the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner. So someone who's reached the stage of non-returner will not take rebirth again after that. So they haven't achieved arhatship yet. So, but they've eliminated enough of things that they won't take rebirth. So the bodhisattvas are in a better position because of their accumulation of merit. Also, from the path of seeing onward, they no longer take rebirth like once more or 2 more, and so forth. They have eliminated that link in the 12 links that causes rebirth in cyclic existence.
And then I guess a follow-up question though, if on the first bhumi before the 8th, if they haven't ceased all delusions,
Right.
at the time of death though, couldn't a delusion still serve as the condition for one of the karmic seeds to ripen? Or
So they're weakened to
okay, I
they're
see.
weakened to the extent that they're not sufficiently strong to cause the karmic seed to transform into the link called becoming. Becoming, when we talk about craving, grasping, and becoming of those 12 links, right? Becoming is actually karma. Craving and grasping are delusions, as we talked about before. Becoming is actually karma. It means that the karmic seed now has been empowered due to craving and grasping to be sufficient to throw you into a future lifetime. So on the path of seeing of the bodhisattva, they have eliminated the power of that grasping to enable the seed to become able to throw one into another rebirth.
Thank you so much.
I'll have some more to say about that later. Stephen.
Thank you, Venerable George. And I think you may have touched on this in your conversation with Jennifer, but I was recollecting the analogy we had of the sorcerer, the magician, who was putting on a performance. And we were talking about the second audience member who, although they still perceived the attractive person that was created by the magic of the sorcerer, they did not assent to that person, to the existence of that person. And I think it was an analogy of the identity view. So
Right, that hasn't right now. You're talking about when we talked about these in tenets in previous courses, right?
Yeah. And so that person, what level are they at? Are they an Arya or are they an Arhat?
They're like an Arya because
Okay.
it still appears to them. right?
Yes,
Yeah, well,
exactly.
even arhat things still appear to them, but they're like an Arya, at least in that the things appear to them, but they don't believe them. So that means someone in the audience, let's say the example is this, for those who are not following. This is a little bit different than the example that we were talking about before, but can follow on to it. A sorcerer or a magician creates an illusion of elephant or a beautiful woman. And some people in the audience who are not, sophisticated, because it appears to them, they go, wow, there's an elephant here, I better get out. Or this beautiful woman, like in the example that was given, they might even have some visceral reaction to that, sort of get excited and have desire and lust and so forth. Whereas there are other people who are more sophisticated, just talking about the worldly example. They've seen this before and they know that there's nothing really there. So they see that, but they don't develop that kind of fear or attachment, depending on what the apparition is. And there's a third kind of participant who was not affected by the spell of the magician at all, and they don't see the illusion at all from the side of the illusion. That would be like a Buddha. So they don't see from their own side the appearance of this apparition doesn't appear to them at all. Okay. Ida.
Thank you, Venerable. Going back to Nagarjuna's verses, I want to check my understanding. So below Prasangika, they consider an afflictive ignorance grasping at a self-sufficient.
They say what?
Below Prasangika, the systems below Prasangika consider afflictive ignorance as grasping at self-sufficient, substantially existent person, but grasping at
no, that's not the only afflicted ignorance, but that's the main one for them. Okay. They use that term. Prasantika doesn't usually use that term at all. Afflicted.
Right. Okay. But grasping at inherent existence is not an affliction, because they consider persons and phenomena as existing inherently. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
They say that the Buddha not only eliminates afflicted ignorance, but non-afflicted ignorance. They say that kind of ignorance that's that the Buddha eliminates something more than the afflicted ignorance. They don't say exactly what it is. They're not saying it's that the Buddha eliminates grasping to the inherent existence of phenomena. They just say that the Buddha has a deeper wisdom that has eliminated another kind of ignorance. It's unafflicted, non-afflicted, which allows the Buddha to see distant places that even the arhats cannot see, to know distant times, to know all phenomena, not necessarily in the Hinayana perception of things, not necessarily simultaneously, but for the Mahayana, what they're referring to seems to be, this apprehension of the non-inherent existence of phenomena, even though they're not even implying that. The Mahayana would say that's what Shantideva was saying in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara in those various quotations. He says, this is like what you call non-afflicted ignorance, this grasping to the inherent existence of the aggregates and so forth. Okay. Sean, what do you think?
I just wanted to clarify when it says that there no longer takes birth through the power of karma from the first crown onward. They're still taking births, just not through the throwing karma. So they're like have more control over the birth, I guess. Is that what
Yeah.
that's saying? Okay.
Yes, yes, the bodhisattvas have control to take rebirth. When we talked about the various qualities of the bhumis, we talked about their ability and the various bhumis to take rebirth in higher and higher levels as a result of their prayers and aspirations. They don't have, from that point on, from the path of seeing on, from the first bhumi on, they no longer have an ordinary body. They have what is called a iki rangshin gilu, a body which is the nature of mind, mental body. So that will come more in the sixth bhumi, and the sixth bhumi, the main part of the text, which we have yet to get to. Also, that's talked about in the Uttara Tantra and other texts, sort of some esoteric points about this. Okay, let me continue on. Okay, are we okay? Okay. So this statement is not made from the more general perspective of the mere presence of the identity view in a person. For example, although the identity view persists up until the seventh ground, one no longer takes rebirth through the power of karma from the first ground onward. That one is taking rebirth by activating karmic seeds, not by grasping at the time of death, but by one's own prayers and aspirations. The bodhisattva is able to create the karma to take rebirth by choice that way. So this is, one no longer takes rebirth through the power of karma, uncontrolled rebirth, right? One takes rebirth still by the power of karma, but by one's own choice. The text continues. Texts such as those cited above demonstrate how, if one is divorced from meditative cultivation of the view of suchness, one cannot bring about the cessation of the identity view. If one is lacking meditation on emptiness, actual emptiness of inherent existence, the view of suchness, one cannot bring about the cessation of the identity view. The identity view here, the view of the transitory collection, is not, as in the Hinayana presentation of things, something that views the person as being self-supporting, substantially existent. That's their consideration of the view of the transitory collection. But here it says that's not sufficient unless you have the more sophisticated view, unless you're able to eliminate the more subtle kind of grasping at the person as being inherently existent, you are not able to eliminate the identity view. Just realizing the person is lacking self-supporting substantial existence is not sufficient. Okay. Okay. I can't remember Snehi's mudra there. Is that thinking? Okay. They thus show that if one possesses only the path of the 16 characteristics, or the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, the afflictions cannot be eliminated. One still has to realize the emptiness of these 16 aspects. Remember earlier when it talked about the quotation from a sutra, the Buddha was saying, what do you think? I can't remember who he was asking at the time, Manjushri or someone, if the person meditates on the impermanence of the you know, in a magical creation, one feels embarrassed about one's attraction to this beautiful woman that the magician has created, and one meditates on the impermanence of that woman and its suffering nature and so forth. Is that right? And I think Manjushri said, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. And so the Buddha said, in the same way, meditating on the aggregates, still conceiving them to be inherently existent, which they are not, right? Meditating on them as being impermanent and suffering and selfless and empty and so forth also is distorted, is wrong, you know, because they don't, you're thinking about impermanent, inherently existent aggregates, you know, suffering inherently existent aggregates and so forth. So that doesn't cut the mustard, so to speak. They thus show, that is, the citations above from Nagarjuna, show that if one possesses only the path of the 16 characteristics, the path of the meditating on the 16 aspects, instead of saying characteristics, we usually translate aspects, such as impermanence, the afflictions cannot be eliminated. You still have to meditate on those 16 aspects, but with the understanding that they are empty of inherent existence. Simply, where's the word that it puts in there? Shows that if one possesses only or merely the path of the 16 characteristics, without realizing that the aggregates are empty and so forth, of inherent existence, the afflictions cannot be eliminated. Clear? Claro? Okay. Therefore, to read Chandrakirti, if someone misreads Chandrakirti, to read Chandrakirti as presenting a unique understanding of the selflessness of persons, but then leave intact the presentation of the afflictions, including identifying what constitutes the identity view based on the common level Hinayana view of the selflessness of persons, that is, a person being empty of self-supporting, substantially existent person, one would be committing a serious error. I'm not saying anything new, but it's just reiterating. One would be failing to appreciate thoroughly the uniqueness of Chandrakirti's philosophical system. It's not just Chandrakirti's system. Lama Tsong is calling Chandrakirti's system here, but it's the system that was set out by Nagarjuna and reiterated by Buddhapalita and so forth. So it's not only Chandrakirti's invention, right? Now, on these points, how can this master, who is sovereign among the learned ones, ever be mistaken? Those who fail to comprehend that Chandrakirti, in fact, establishes the standpoint that Travakas and Pratika Buddhas do possess the realization of the selflessness of phenomena, those for whom it does not even cross their minds to inquire whether there is a unique presentation on the afflictions, such supposed followers of Chandrakirti relate to this tradition with their devotion alone. What I have indicated here is only illustrative. There are numerous other points, and he puts in parentheses here, of uniqueness to the system that need careful investigation. Okay, Prasangika system, as Chandrakirti pointed out, as Nagarjuna implied, Buddhapalita implied, has many unique views different than the general presentation of the Hinayana that we find in the tenet systems. Okay, how are we doing? Are we okay? Cornelius, are you lost? Are you okay?
I'm following. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Looking at other faces, looks like you're okay. Sean, you have a quick one?
So if you can maintain the clear light nature of mind view, and is that, if you consider that the I, is that still the view of the transitory collection, or have you
What, the clear light nature of the mind?
because the clear light nature of mind would continue
You're
on.
talking about the conventional clear light nature of the mind or the ultimate clear light nature of the mind?
I would think probably the ultimate clear light nature of mind.
If you've realized the ultimate clear light nature of the mind, that means you've realized the emptiness of the mind. The emptiness of the mind as being inherently existent. That's centered out, that's sort of, you could say, why not say the emptiness of the aggregates or the emptiness of phenomena? Emptiness of the mind is something special. That, as I've mentioned before, the Dalai Lama and other, the Buddhas said, if you realize the emptiness of the mind, you can make especially quick progress on the path. So that's one reason for using this Mahamudra meditation, that first of all tries to realize the conventional clear light nature of the mind, then on the basis of that developing single-pointed concentration, then on the basis of that investigating the ultimate clear light nature of the mind, which you're already familiar with from seeing its conventional nature, then realizing the emptiness of that. That's a really smart way to go about, rather than meditating on the emptiness of, other things or and so forth. You can make very, very quick progress that way. So let's leave that. Okay. So where are we? Okay. So then, continuing, the text says, and it quotes here, the three avenues. Hopkins translates these three sets of thorough afflictions. Which are three things: afflictions, the delusions, the klesha, actions, and production. These three avenues. Jimpa says the three thoroughly afflicted factors of afflictions, karma, and rebirth. So remember, when we talk about the 12 links, you can divide the 12 links into these three. So which of the links, Nadine, are afflictions? Do you remember?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would have to think a little bit. Ignorance.
Ignorance is one. And then of the craving, grasping, becoming, craving and grasping are also afflictions. So those three fall under the avenue, as he calls here, afflictions. Karma, which of the 12 links are karma, Nadine? Do you know? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, don't worry. So among karma, the second link, karmic formations, or karma, is obviously karma, and also becoming. Remember, of craving, grasping, and becoming. Craving and grasping cause a karmic seed, which was planted on the second link. When you had the second link, causes it to become enabled, ready to throw you into the next rebirth. So the avenue of afflictions is three: ignorance, craving, grasping. The avenue of karma is two: karmic formations and becoming. And then birth is all the other 7 factors of the 12 links: consciousness, name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling, birth, aging, and death. Okay. So the 3 avenues here are those: that there is no beginning and no end and no middle to these 3 is because from the afflictions, let's say the first link, craving, the first link, ignorance, arises karma. or also if you took the craving, grasping, because of craving and grasping, karma is enabled. And from there, sufferings arise, its own subsequent stages, as well as further afflictions. Since each produces the other, there is no fixed sequence. When you meditate on the 12 links, I remember Lama Yeshe used to say during, when the Sangha would take the summer to do 3-month retreat every year when we were at Kopan. And he suggested to some of us to meditate not just on the Four Noble Truths, but on the 12 links, because it gives you a further understanding how we're enmeshed within cyclic existence. Every time we create karma, every time out of ignorance we create karma, karmic seeds that may remain in our mind stream for many, many lifetimes, and they themselves give rise to other links in future times. So it's just like we continue to circle within cyclic existence. There's no fixed sequence. In other words, they mutually serve as each other's cause and effect. This dependent origination does not come into being from self, other, or both. Moreover, it does not obtain its arising through intrinsic nature in any of the 3 times. That means it's not inherently, what does it say? Obtain its arising. It is not inherently born. It is not inherently generated. It is not inherently produced through, intrinsic nature, or say inherent nature. It's not inherently arisen. Jeffrey translates that as, furthermore, inherently existent production is not obtained. And then he says, that is to say, he said, what does it mean is not obtained? That is to say, it is not seen in the past, present, or future. There's no such thing as inherent production. And owing to this reason of seeing emptiness of intrinsic arising, the identity view ceases, and in this way, one's wandering in cyclic existence comes to be overturned. Someone had their hand up, and I missed it. Who was?
Yeah, just, about these 3 groups among the 12 links. The third one is called here birth, and
that's how Jimpa translates it.
I'm used to like suffering, the 7 sufferings, suffering links.
Here it's called, in the text, it's called production. So Jeffrey translates it, these 3 sets of thorough afflictions. That is affliction, meaning ignorance, attachment, ignorance, craving, and grasping, action, or karma, compositional action, that is the second link, and existence, or becoming, and then production, the other 7. So production, that which is produced, in other words, Jimpa translates that as birth. Maybe birth sounds like just one link, but this is saying those things that are produced. There are 3 things here. There's 3 avenues, or 3 kind of cycles: afflictions, karma, and those things that are produced, or that are not afflictions and that are not karma. Those are, that is, what do we say here? Consciousness is a produced phenomena, right? It's a impermanent phenomena. Name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling, birth, aging, and death. Contact is not just the coming together of 2 things. Contact is the name of a mental factor, right?
But is it correct to call these 7 also sufferings because they are produced under the influence of ignorance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But also, you can also say ignorance and craving and grasping are also suffering. All the 12 links are suffering, right? So in some texts it may translate that third set of things as sufferings.
Yeah.
But here in the quotation that's being given, they're called products.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, or production, or Jimpa translates it as birth. So thus, this dependent origination does not come into being from self, other, or both. That means when we talk about, in the 6th chapter, when we talk about production, so production only refers to things that are impermanent, right? Products. We talk about products and non-products. Products means things that are produced from causes and conditions. Non-products means impermanent phenomena like space, the two cessations, emptiness, and so forth, permanent phenomena. So products, what does it say here? This dependent origination does not come into being, is not produced from self, other, or both. So when we first in the 6th chapter, when we're in the beginning of fundamental wisdom, Nagarjuna proves the non-inherent arising, the non-inherent production. You prove that that phenomena are not produced from themselves, like a sprout is not produced from itself. It's produced from something which is other than itself. If it was produced from itself, it would already have been existent before, so there would be no need for production. It's not produced from something which is inherently different than itself. The sprout is not produced from a seed which is inherently different from it, because if the seed were inherently different from the sprout that it produces, it would have no relation to it at all, and it couldn't be counted as the cause of the sprout. And it's not produced from both itself or other. And there's even a fourth factor. It's not produced causelessly. Here it just mentions 3 of the factors that Nagarjuna talks about. So dependent origination is not produced from self, other, or both. And moreover, it does not obtain its arising. It is not produced through the intrinsic nature in any of the 3 times. It's not in the past, the present, or the future. It doesn't exist. Zato, zip. Inherent production doesn't exist in any manner. And owing to this reason of seeing emptiness of intrinsic arising, the emptiness of an inherent production, the identity view ceases. So in other words, if you realize one way of proving emptiness is to prove the non-inherent production of phenomena. That only applies to impermanent phenomena, right? That they're not inherently produced, because they're not inherently produced from self, from other, from both, or not inherently produced without cause. Owing to this reason of seeing emptiness of intrinsic production, the identity view ceases. So if you've realized the emptiness of phenomena, the view of the transitory collection ceases, and in this way, one's wandering and cyclic existence comes to be overturned. Okay, makes sense? Don, how are you? I can't see because the label for your, also my label sort of covers my face sometimes. I was thinking to make my
I'm
label.
doing fine, George, thanks.
Okay, you're understanding, okay. Toby, are you with us? Okay. Having established that the aggregates, elements, and so on lack any intrinsic existence, the text explains in its conclusion how it is through having seen the truth of suchness that one transcends sorrow. That means that one attains nirvana. When you say, the word for nirvana in Tibetan is Nyanen le depa. Nyanen means silent. Here, what is it? Jimpa translates as sorrow. We say Nyanen le depa, passing beyond suffering, is one etymology of nirvana. Thus, with this perfect truth, knowing that beings lack essence, lack any intrinsic existence, like a fire starved of its fuel, right? That is the fire that causes you to continually be born in cyclic existence, is the grasping at inherent existence. If you realize that that doesn't exist, the fuel is gone, like a fire starved of its fuel, with no basis, nothing to appropriate, one transcends sorrow, one achieves nirvana. Right? I have the wrong note here somehow. Okay, Hopkins translates, knowing thus truly and correctly that animate beings are unreal, are not truly existent, not being subject to rebirth, and without grasping, one passes from pain like a fire without its cause. This is just Jeffrey's translation of that verse. So that's verse from Precious Garland. In Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Vatara auto commentary, he quotes several other verses in between there in Precious Garland. So all of those verses in a row. Here, Lama Tsongkhapa just mentions, I think, the first three and the last one. In the actual auto commentary, there are more verses quoted. How are we doing? Kind of like this, or like this, or Stephen, what do you think?
Oh, thank you, Venerable George. A question about dependent origination and causality. So dependent origination applies, I believe, to both permanent and impermanent phenomena.
The general meaning, so remember there are several levels of meaning of dependent origination. In the Hinayana, generally, they say that dependent arising has to do with causality, like in the 12 links, right? That phenomena arise because of causes and conditions. The 12 links is a little more subtler than that, but in the Mahayana, we talk about subtler meanings of dependent origination that are implicative of emptiness. That is, that the basis of imputation, say the appearance of something, the consciousness that apprehends that, and the name that the consciousness gives or imputes to that phenomena, they are dependently like a tripod of a fire. Have you ever gone camping? Were you a Boy Scout? I don't know. Maybe you didn't have. You don't have to be a Boy Scout. Make a tripod, with 3 sticks. Of course, nowadays people put string around the sticks, or they use 3 rocks. Here is talking about 3 sticks that are balanced upon one another. Can you get 3 sticks? Maybe 3 chopsticks. They have to have a little bit of friction, I guess. Otherwise, they'll slip. All of them depending upon one another. That's the subtle meaning of dependent arising. That it implies that phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Nadine, I hope that's not a bottle of German wine.
No, it's water.
It's water. It looked like it had a like it might be some German drink. So Stephen, continue.
Okay, so Venerable George, then, if I captured what you said to us, at a gross level, we can equate dependent arising and causality.
Yes, that's the grossest level. Yeah,
at the grossest level, but among more subtle levels, the 2 other levels of interpretation, it is more than just causality. In fact, at the highest level, it becomes synonymous with emptiness.
Right, right. So in the Hinayana, when they talk about dependent arising, sometimes it just means the first level, mere causality. Sometimes it means, they say, oh, more sophisticated meaning the 12 links of dependent origination. That is more subtle than just, because it's talking about particular, sequence of events of the 12 links. But in the Mahayana, it talks about the arising of phenomena dependent on two other factors, depending on these three that I mentioned, maybe the most subtle, that is the basis of imputation, the consciousness that's apprehending that basis, and the name that's imputed. Those three, like the three legs of a tripod, are interdependent to one another. They're dependent upon one another. You can't have the name imputed unless there's a basis. You can't have the imputation unless there's a consciousness, and so forth. There's a slightly maybe similar version when we say that phenomena are dependent upon its parts that can eventually be that eventually will lead you to the understanding that that's not quite as subtle as the subtlemost version, where phenomena are dependent on these three, the basis, the imputation, and the consciousness. But in another, when we say that phenomena are dependent arisings because they're dependent upon their parts, that applies to all phenomena also, not just to impermanent phenomena. Even space, which is permanent, right? That is the name space, the conventional phenomena space, is dependent upon its parts, the north, the south, the east, the west, and so forth. Even emptiness is dependent upon its parts. Okay. So, continue. Oh, Snehi, yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to actually follow up on Stephen's question. So on the parts and wholes, would it be correct to say that both the Hinayana and Mahayana systems would accept that? I mean, I know the Mahayana does, but would the Hinayana also accept parts and wholes as a definition of dependent arising?
Generally, no, I don't think. Here, when we say that phenomena are dependent upon their parts, generally, I don't think the Hinayana calls that dependent arising, because this kind of analysis that's being talked about here, that phenomena are dependent upon their parts, can eventually lead to the understanding of emptiness of phenomena. They say that phenomena, although there are imputedly existent phenomena and substantially existent phenomena, they do make that kind of distinction, and that, quote, imputed phenomena, for the Hinayana, it means something different than in the Mahayana, right? In the Mahayana, even what the Hinayana calls substantially existent phenomena are actually merely imputed. But for the Hinayana, when they talk about imputed phenomena, they don't even use the word merely imputed. They just say that phenomena like a rosary is an imputed phenomena because you have to apprehend its parts first, which then you impute the rosary on. Or the army is a imputed phenomena that's imputed on a group of soldiers. Or a forest is an imputed phenomena that's imputed upon its individual trees. If you just see one tree, it's not legitimate to say that you see the forest. So their meaning of imputed is different in different ways. You could say that imputed phenomena depend upon its parts, but not in the same way that we're talking about imputed phenomena in the Mahayana as being dependent upon their parts. When we talk about dependent arising, that imputed phenomena, conventional phenomena, arise in dependence upon their parts. It's more subtle in the Mahayana.
Yes, I think that is what I was thinking, Venerable George, the examples of the rosary and so forth, that, those are wholes and they get deconstructed into parts in the Vaibhashika Sautantrika. And I was confusing that with, I think, like you were saying, the Mahayana understanding of parts and wholes.
Right. They're very related. I mean, there's sort of one, that's a very normal question to come up, a doubt to have. So one has to realize that when we talk about in the Hinayana, when we talked about the Vaibhashika and Sautratika tenets, we talked about substantial phenomena and imputed phenomena. And imputed phenomena were things that you had to see all of the parts in order to perceive the phenomena. You didn't perceive the rosary by perceiving one bead or maybe just a couple of beads on the table. It had to be, you had to see all of them to say that you saw the rosary or the forest or the army and so forth. Okay, so this gives you an indication that all of those courses that we studied before, tenets and so forth, have some some justification. The more sophisticated understanding as you go from the Hinayana to the Mahayana in general, and then to the Madhyamaka, and then amongst the Madhyamaka, the difference of subtlety between the Svatantrika, Madhyamaka, and the Prasankika, always building on the earlier understandings, which had a certain validity, which in the teachers always say are like the steps of a staircase that lead you up to the correct view. All of these lower views setting some kind of standard for you to understand, and then when a more subtle view is introduced, based on that previous understanding, you can understand the subtler view more correctly. Okay, so okay, Jennifer, another question now.
Yeah, thank you. So for the tripod, what is the technical definition of name that consciousness imputes?
What is the technical name, did you say?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand a little bit better what the definition of name is that the consciousness imputes. Is it for instance, as a human being, if we're drinking coffee, can it be coffee as the label? Can it be, good or bad? Are our subjective assessments also name? Also for lower level beings who don't necessarily have, prefrontal cortex or the ability to have language, very simple beings that are sentient beings, what would name be for them?
Right. So technically, phenomena are imputed by names and concepts, not just names. This shorthand, we can say name. As you say for instance, a cow, we talked about this also in tenets, a cow who needs to have salt. Farmers put out what they call a salt block, right? The cow doesn't think, when it sees that, doesn't think salt block. It has a concept that that's something that it wants. So phenomena are imputed conventionally by names and concepts. For those who have the ability to use verbal designation, they can be imputed by name, like coffee, or maybe if one doesn't know the name of that, there's a concept in your mind, that bitter thing that wakes me up in the morning, some concept like that. So phenomena are designated in some way and they're recognizable, and Lama Tsongkhapa would say are conventionally valid, conventionally valid phenomena being imputed by names and concepts. Ultimately, if you search for that which you're giving that concept or label to, you can't find it anywhere within the parts of that thing that you're labeling. You can label it with names or concepts like that. Okay, all of this will become, there'll be more detail about this later. We're just sort of going, this is coming up incidentally now, but the actual explanation of it will come in more detail in the 6th chapter, okay?
Venerable George, can I ask a quick follow-up to Jennifer's question?
Yeah.
So when when it said Ming Tak Zam, like the merely name and concept, that is a unique feature of the Prasangika?
Generally, when we say phenomena are imputed merely by name, right? So that distinguishes it from imputed phenomena in the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika as being imputed, let's say imputed by name. Here they're merely imputed by name. That means that there is no inherently existent phenomena there. The lower tenets would say there is a real forest, a real rosary, a real army that is imputed phenomena that is imputed by that name. So the mere name is something that is used only in the Prasangika. Say mere names and concepts. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let me continue a little bit here. So so there's this quotation from this last quotation from Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. Thus, with this perfect truth, knowing that beings lack essence, like a fire starved of its fuel, with no basis, nothing to appropriate, one transcends sorrow. And as I mentioned, Jeffrey translates that on page 168, if you're looking in that book, a little differently. Knowing thus truly and correctly that animate beings are unreal, not being subject to rebirth, and without grasping, one passes from pain or from sorrow like a fire without its cause. So that's just saying that in order to achieve nirvana, you have to realize emptiness. Then the text, Lama Tsongkhapa continues, if one contends that this seeing spoken of here describes the view of bodhisattvas alone, this is incorrect. So when he's saying, thus with perfect truth, knowing that beings like essence, like a fire starved of this view. So I don't have the Tibetan in front of me, knowing thusly. So when he's talking about seeing, he's saying about seeing emptiness, right? If one contends that this seeing spoken of here describes the view of the bodhisattvas alone, if one were to say that only the bodhisattvas see suchness or see emptiness of inherent existence, this is incorrect. That this is being stated in connection with Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas is evident from the fact that immediately following the phrase, one transcends sorrow. Remember that verse we just had, the last words of it was, one transcends sorrow, one achieves nirvana. Immediately following the phrase, one transcends sorrow, the text says, the next verse in the Precious Garland, the bodhisattva also, the bodhisattva too, will see thus and definitely aspire for their awakening. However, because of their compassion, they will take births until awakening. So the operative word here is tu, or also, the bodhisattva tu. So that implies the previous verse wasn't just in talking about the Buddhists, it was talking about the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas. And the bodhisattvas also will do this. The texts of the precious garland cited in Chandrakirti's commentary appear to be from an early translation that is not very good, Lama Tsongkhapa says. So what this is talking about is Lama Tsongkhapa was dealing with generally with Chandrakirti's commentary as it was translated into Tibetan. And when, say, it was translated into Tibetan from Sanskrit, right? Chandrakirti comprised his text in Sanskrit. It wasn't until much later when it was brought to Tibet that it was translated into Tibetan by various translators. There were various versions of it at various times. When they translated texts into Tibetan, sometimes there were quotes in Chandrakirti, in the original Chandrakirti text from Sanskrit, right? Chandrakirti quoted Bodhisattva Charyavatara. No, what did he quote? What is he saying here? Texts of the precious garland cited. The text of precious garland. So in Chandrakirti, he's not quoting Shantideva because Shantideva came after Chandrakirti, right? He's quoting Nagarjuna. And when he quotes Nagarjuna, which also wrote in Sanskrit, those verses had already been translated into Tibetan, sort of standardized. So the translators took those standardized versions, which were not very good translations, and put them in their Tibetan translation of Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Vatara. So that's what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here. The texts of the precious garland cited in Chandrakirti's commentary, that means his auto-commentary, the Bhasha, auto-commentary to the verses, appear to be from an early translation that is not very good. Make sense? Yeah. Trying to see here. Okay. Maybe not important point. Also, text continues, in a sutra taught to Shravakas to help eliminate their afflictive obstructions, their klesha, conditioned things are analyzed as lacking intrinsic existence by means of 5 similes. So this is a famous verse that's quoted many, many times. Form is like a mass of foam. Feelings are like water bubbles. Perceptions are like mirages. Mental formations are like plantain trees. And consciousness is like an illusion. Thus taught Surya Mitra. Did I mention this verse before? I think I mentioned this before a little bit. So what are these things? Form, feelings. Form is something, feelings are something, perceptions are, mental formations are, consciousness. What are these 5 things? Stephen, what are those?
They are the 5 aggregates, Venerable George.
Yes, those are the 5 aggregates. So this is indirect. This is talking from a Hinayana Sutra. In a Hinayana Sutra, this verse is quoted by many of the Mahayana, the Prasangika, as indicating that even in the Hinayana Sutras, the aggregates themselves are indicated as having some kind of insubstantiality. Form is like a mass of foam, right? Feelings are like water bubbles and so forth. So in Jeffrey's translation, Oh, yeah, no, that's, so what is this? Okay, form is like a massive form. I'm sure. Oh, I see. In a sutra taught by Shravaka, taught to Shravakas. So this quotation is part of the one of the sutras, one of the discourses in the Samyukta Nikaya, the collection of connected discourses, I think it's called. There's a translation that I don't have up in my room here by Bhikkhu Bodhi, Connected Discourses of the Buddha. This is called the Uwa Choba in Tibetan, the lump of foam sutra, Pina Pinda. So this is a, and I'll mention a little bit more of this next time. This is one of the Hinayana suttas that's very, very famous, and one of the discourses, this collection of many, many discourses that the Buddha gave on different occasions. And this particular one is, in this particular sutta, or sutra, we'd say in Sanskrit, is one that talks about these 5 things. In the actual sutta, besides giving this verse, which is kind of a summary, it gives an elaboration of each of these 5, which is not found here. Okay. The last line, it says, thus taught Surya Mitra. So I'm not sure, was it in our discussion group that I mentioned about Surya Mitra? Yeah, so I just wanted to mention a little bit about that. So this name, I think Jeffrey says, translates Surya Mitra as sun friend. Surya in Sanskrit means sun, right? Like the sun in the sky. Mitra means friend or relative. Jeffrey translates it that way. In the Samyutta Nikaya text that's translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi, he translates it as kinsman of the sun. Sun friend, kinsman of the sun. Jimpa sticks with Sanskrit, which is not necessarily the actual correct Sanskrit. He's trying to reconstruct it from the Tibetan. At any rate, this is one of the names of the Buddha. Do any of you know why the Buddha is called the friend of the sun or the kinsman of the sun? I mean, other than those who were in the discussion group last week. Snehi, do you know? Who's our resident Buddhist historian? I don't know. Okay. Ida, you haven't heard? Buddhist called the sun. So there are 2 points here. Sometimes the Buddha is called the sugarcane one. Sometimes he is called the friend of the sun or kinsman of the sun. Both of those epithets, you could say, names, because the Buddha is called, the Buddha is called the Buddha, the Bhagawan, so many different epithets, the Tathagata and so forth. So Jeffrey Hopkins, in his book Meditation on Emptiness, which maybe some of you have, and I think the pagination in that remained the same in the different editions. On page 365, he had this short little paragraph or 2. The current era that we're experiencing in Buddhism is that of Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Because there will be other eras when other Buddhas come, and in the future, there will be some eras where there are no Buddhas. The current era is that of Shakyamuni Buddha, whose lineage is traced back to a child born from an egg. So this has to do with the name of Surya Mitra, or as Jimpa puts here, or the kinsman of the sun. The egg formed from semen that dripped onto a sugarcane leaf from a man wrongly accused as a killer. There's a longer version of this story, long, very, very long. We talked about it read it in the discussion group. Some virtuous man who was actually a recluse was accused of murder incorrectly, and when he was about to be hung, some saint that was with him at the time suggested that if he died without having any heirs, any children, that would be a bad thing. And so this saint who was with him tried to get him to feel some, maybe to have some sexual intercourse and have some children before he died, but he wasn't up for this. He was beaten and so forth, and so the egg. So an egg was formed from semen that dripped onto a sugarcane leaf from a man wrongly accused as a killer. The saint that was with him caused him to develop some lust by causing a breeze to come and for him to feel some comfort and so forth. He was strung up for punishment, and having proved his innocence through causing his teacher's very black face to turn golden. So the saint or teacher that was there had, kind of Dravidian complexion, very dark complexion, and the accused person who was actually innocent said that by the power of truth, of my truth, that I am innocent, may my teacher's face turn golden. So that the teacher's face turned gold. His semen dripped onto a sugarcane leaf. It formed an egg which his teacher nurtured, and a child hatched. Thus the child, the lineage, and eventually Shakyamuni himself came to be known as the sugarcane one, because the semen had fallen on the sugarcane leaf. He's also called what did we call here? The kinsman of the sun, because it was the sun that caused this egg to hatch. So anyway, I'm not going to read that whole story. Doris, did that page go up on the Facebook page?
No, I didn't know that you wanted it put up, but I could put it up.
Yeah, if it, maybe put that up.
Just to paste from that book, you mean?
That document that I sent you that had that quotation from Jeffrey Hopkins, and also from Dan Martin's A History of Buddhism in Tibet. Dan Martin is a Buddhist scholar and translator. I don't know if any of you know Dan Martin, any of you older students? Dan Martin was a friend of John Fahey, one of our original monks at Kopan, became a translator, and he translated A History of Buddhism in Tibet. Very, very nice.
He lives in Israel now, right?
Could be, yeah. I think Dan lives he's active in a lot of different Buddhist forums and so forth. So he gives a very, very long history of this story. And those of you who are interested in such things, I'll ask Doris to put that up on the Facebook page so you can download
You'll
that.
have to send it to me, Venerable, because I don't recall you sending it to me. If you could.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I'll send it to you. Okay. So anyway, this quotation is from Hinayana Sutra, and let me just check one thing here. So Jeffrey Hopkins said, in a sutra for hearers, products are analyzed as not existing inherently by means of 5 examples in order that hearers might abandon the obstructions to liberation, right? So I'm not sure I put that down here. So this is from the Lump of Foam Sutra in the Samyutta Nikaya. I thought this might have been the one that was requested by a sutra requested by Shariputra, but I don't know the name of the sutra. Anyway, so form is like a mass of foam. Feelings are like water bubbles. Discriminations or perceptions are like mirages. Compositional factors are like the plantain tree, or as Jeffrey says, banana tree. Consciousness consciousnesses are like magical illusions. Thus, the Buddha, the sun friend, said, Jeffrey said, or Surya Mitra. So I'll talk a little bit about that more next time. Diana, do you have a thought, question?
Thank you, Venerable. In the Lump of Foam Sutra, the other similes seem self-evident. Why particularly banana trees or plantain trees right, as a way to denote compositional factors? Is it one of the part-whole things, and is there something special about banana trees?
Yeah, there's something special about banana trees and plantain trees. So any of you privy to plantain trees where you are, or banana trees in India? If you take off the leaves of the banana tree, you keep on taking them off, there's a stalk, of course. In the end, there's nothing there in the center. So if you analyze compositional factors into their parts, like say, for instance, the famous investigation of the carriage in the questions of King Milinda, that I talked about last time. If you take away the wheel, you're trying to find the carriage, you take away the spokes, the hub, the rim of the wheels, the carriage, the reins, and all these things, you can't find the carriage anywhere, right? If you take away its parts, kind of like searching for the essence of the banana or plantain tree. If you take away all of its leaves, there's nothing left at the end. That's kind of the reason for that. Okay, Doris, did you have a?
Just letting you know that I did find it. It's from well in the past, like 2.5 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. Okay. So this is quoted here because that sutra is very, very well known. And where is this other? Here we go. So let me see if I have this here on my computer. All right, okay. So yeah, here we go. Okay, I'm trying to find the statement that Bhikkhu Bodhi made in his text about this, and I don't have it at my fingertips. I'll mention next time. Bhikkhu Bodhi is saying, you shouldn't think that this quotation is in any way saying that phenomena are not real. This is kind of like the Hinayana position, right? The Sarvastivadin, that all phenomena are truly existent. You know, he's saying you shouldn't understand it that way. This has some different meaning, which is kind of funny because it's sort of even perpetuated now into the present commentator. Bhikkhu Bodhi is a present, I think, still living, right? Bhikkhu Bodhi, German scholar and monk, always goes by the name Bhikkhu Bodhi. Still, you know, still holding that the Hinayana Sutras are not talking in any way about the lack of true existence or the lack of inherent existence. Okay, let me just mention a little bit more here. So in the commentary on the awakening mind, this is one of the or as Hopkins says, in his essay on the mind of enlightenment, Nagarjuna distinguishes between hearers and bodhisattvas. Bodhicitta Vivarana is the name of a text by Nagarjuna. Didn't His Holiness teach that recently? I think some of you attended. Snehi, did you attend those teachings? So
Online, yeah.
So that was online recently. So Nagarjuna wrote many texts. One of them is called the Essay on the Mind of Enlightenment. Nagarjuna distinguishes between hearers and bodhisattvas. And I'm reading from Jeffrey's translation. I'll go back to Jimpa in a second. The teacher, meaning the Buddha, taught the 5 aggregates for hearers and the 5 similarities, that forms are like balls of foam and so forth, for bodhisattvas. That's how Jeffrey translates. Or as Jimpa says, in the commentary on the awakening mind by Nagarjuna, draws on a distinction stating that the Buddha taught Shravakas the 5 aggregates, while he taught bodhisattvas how forms and so forth resemble the 5 similes, such as a mass of foam. The reference there is to those Shravakas who, for the time being, remain unable to realize suchness. It is not meant to include all Shravakas. So, because this text the quotation of like forms are like balls of foam and so forth, that was actually meant for the Shravakas, but not for those who are temporarily unable to realize emptiness. Generally, we say that of the hearers, there are 2 levels. One that are capable of understanding emptiness, and some that are temporarily, for the time being, unable to realize emptiness. So for that, the Buddha taught the 5 aggregates for those that are unable to, unable temporarily to realize emptiness. For those that are able to realize emptiness, and for bodhisattvas, he taught these 5 similes that we just talked about. The reference there is to those Shravakas who, for the time being, remain unable to realize suchness. It is not meant to include all Shravakas, for in the same text it reads, that is in the what do we say in the Bodhisattva, in this commentary on bodhicitta, it reads, those who do not understand emptiness are not receptive vehicles for liberation. Such ignorant beings will revolve in the prison of existence of the 6 classes of beings. Okay. So what does Jeffrey say? Jeffrey says in his essay on the mind of enlightenment, oh, sorry. Okay, here we go. In his essay on the mind of enlightenment, Nagarjuna distinguishes between hearers and bodhisattvas. The teacher taught the 5 aggregates for hearers and the 5 similarities, that forms are like balls of foam and so forth, for bodhisattvas. His distinction is based on hearers who are temporarily unable to cognize suchness and does not refer to all hearers. That same text, the same text says, those who know not emptiness, do not know emptiness, are not bases for liberation. The obscured wander in the 6 migrations, in the prisons, in the prison of cyclic existence, in the prison of samsara. Just this meaning of the non-inherent existence of phenomena is taught in the Hinayana scriptural divisions. The Precious Garland says, in the great vehicle, non-origination is taught, and in the other, so you say in the great vehicle, that means the Mahayana, right? Non-origination is taught. So Nagarjuna and the Prasangika and the Mahayana, we talk about non-inherent production, non-origination, non-production. And in the other, that means the Hinayana, exhaustion, namely emptiness. Both of them refer to emptiness. Since cessation and non-arising are the same, concede that the Mahayana scripture is authentic. Okay, this is where we're going to begin next time. So I'll giving you some more sources for this, the Hinayana quotation that we gave before. But here, this quotation from the Precious Garland is quoting a Hinayana. In general, it says that we'll come in about two pages more. In the Hinayana Sutra, cited in the commentary on the 60 stanzas, one reads, that which is the total elimination of this suffering, a definite elimination, a purification, and exhaustion. So this is talking about when it says in the Hinayana, exhaustion is taught. This is in relationship to when we talk about the nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. So I'm gonna leave it right there now, and just see if anyone has any questions before we end. Are you confused? Mikhail, you're not confused.
Back to the list of qualities that was described by Tsong for the first round.
Right.
Yeah. When it says all grounds of ordinary persons are blocked. Is that meaning that there won't be any rebirth due to karma?
There won't be any what?
A rebirth due to karma? Is that the same?
I think that is referring to the fact that once you've realized emptiness directly, which takes place on the first ground, right? You no longer will fall back. You no longer can lose that realization and fall back into the what does he call it? The realm of ordinary beings? What did he say?
Ordinary beings, yeah.
Okay. So that means ordinary beings are beings that have not realized emptiness, right? So once you've realized emptiness directly, you've become an Arya, there's no way to lose that. There are other realizations along the path that you can develop, and by not continuing that practice or not keeping it in mind, that can be lost. Like say, for instance, Shine, you can develop tranquil abiding, and when you arise from that tranquil abiding, You are actually already suppressed the delusions of the desire realm. You already seem like a saintly person, but becoming distracted and losing that concentration, you have to use effort again to develop Shine. It's something that can be lost. So here it's talking about the realization of emptiness. When you have a direct realization of emptiness, that's not something that can be lost. What about bodhicitta? When you develop bodhicitta initially, is that irreversible also? Sheila, do you know? Where did Sheila go? She disappeared. Sheila, can bodhicitta be reversed?
I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
You don't think so? Once you have spontaneous bodhicitta, that's irreversible. Okay. Anyone think differently? Nadine, what do you think?
I think it becomes irreversible from the second bhumi, wasn't it?
Oh, no. It becomes irreversible on the earlier than the second bhumi. Once you've developed bodhicitta, you haven't even necessarily achieved the bhumis, right? You're on the path of accumulation, Mahayana path of accumulation. On the second level of the path of accumulation, you have a bodhicitta that's said to be gold-like. So on the first part of the path of accumulation, when you first become a bodhisattva, it's possible to lose your bodhicitta, and that's enshrined in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Those of you who are studying with the teacher, Shariputra, it's said in a previous life to have developed bodhicitta, and the Shariputra who became the Arhat, right? So he was in the Hinayana path when Buddha Shakyamuni was here, but in life many eons before that, he had actually entered the Bodhisattva path, and he had not reached the path, the second part of the path of accumulation, and his bodhicitta was called earth-like, not gold-like. Gold is kind of immutable, right? So at that point, some Mara came, or some God realm being, to test his resolve and asked him for his right hand. He needed it for some ceremony. So Shariputra tried to develop his bodhicitta and thought, I'd always worked for myself in previous lives. Now I'm working for the sake of all sentient beings. I should be able to give my hand. So he cut off his right hand with great suffering and handed it to this other person, who was an emanation, either a god or a Mara, handed it to him necessarily with his left hand, because his right hand had been cut off, right? And this other person said, I can't accept this. You've handed it to me with your left hand, which is an insult in India, right? I don't know. Maybe, is that still the case, Snehi? So, because that's the left hand is the hand you use to wash your bum off when you go to the toilet. So you never hand anything with your left hand. You always hand it with your right hand. So at that point, Shariputra, lost his bodhicitta. He got angry, and how can I work for sentient beings? There's a quotation in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara say, in the context of bodhicitta, saying only the omniscient mind could know how someone who gave up bodhicitta could ever, reach, decent states again. And that's in the commentaries refer that to Shariputra, who had actually given up bodhicitta, but later, many eons later, became an arhat. Okay, so that's, you can give up bodhicitta. There's many realizations you can give up, you can lose. But if you've realized emptiness directly, it's irreversible. Okay. So, is it Karen? Could you put up the dedication prayers? Great. Just go beyond that to the dedication. Maybe it's above that, dedication prayers. Huh? And there we go. Due to these merits, due to these virtues, Gewadi, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that very state. And then below that, may the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase evermore. Long life prayers. You, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who uphold Shakyamuni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers that honor the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. And for all of our teachers, Dalai Lamas, and so forth, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, the supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So when we start next time, we'll start from this little section where it says, when presenting how the absence of intrinsic existence of phenomena is taught in the Hinayana scriptures, the precious Garland says, in the great vehicle, non-origination, and so forth. What page is that in the written text?
96.
Page 96. And who sees in Hopkins' text where that is? I think that's on page 169 in Hopkins. So if you have that, make a note of that. That's where we'll start next time. We'll have discussion group on Monday. There's a link that you can join. We had a lot of fun, I think. And look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you,
Venerable
thank you so
George.
much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Shantideva.